Hello everyone, welcome to our channel. I am Rodrigo and today we will answer the following question. Is brain backup possible?
And I am Milena, and today we have a video that blew our minds. It is from the A Nerd channel, one of the giants of pop culture in Brazil, and Peter simply decided to tackle one of the most complex and fascinating topics that exist, brain backups.
Exactly, Milena. Folks, before we start, leave a comment. If it were possible to save all the data from your brain and transfer it to a new body and live forever, would you like to, or are you completely against it? Let's talk. Leave your opinion in the comments. Peter already starts with a brilliant provocation. He makes us think about how we already live in a culture of backup. He says, photos of those unforgettable vacations, right? Everything's saved in the cloud. Important documents, all scanned, saved in the cloud. He puts us in this comfort zone, showing something that is absolutely normal in our daily life. We no longer live without the cloud, without backup of our files.
It is a perfect introduction because he takes us by the hand, talking about our thesis, our documents, and then he drops the bomb. He questions, why can't we back up literally everything? And when he says everything, he means everything indeed. He presents a tragic yet fantastic scenario. You suffer a fatal accident, you're dragged along, as he says. But it's not the end. Just restore the backup. How crazy to start a video with this idea.
It's both chilling and marvelous at the same time. We immediately ask ourselves, okay, but how could this be possible? And that is Peter's promise in the video, to show the technology he calls the ultimate revolution of human life. He doesn't hold back on the adjectives, and from what the video delivers, he's right. The idea that brain backup is real and might be closer than we imagine is the main hook. And of course, as a good nerd, he already warns that science fiction arrived first, as always.
Certainly. And this part is one of my favorites. Peter has this mastery of connecting science with pop culture, and he does it brilliantly here. He reminds us that there is no current or future technology that fiction has not already imagined. He throws the bait, and we bite. He asks us to recall from memory and begins to showcase a truckload of examples. The first, and perhaps the most emblematic, is the anime franchise Ghost in the Shell. All the philosophical and technological basis of Ghost in the Shell is this: cloning human consciousnesses, transferring them to cybernetic bodies, the shells.
And it doesn't stop there. He dives headfirst into Marvel Comics. As a fan, I love this part. He explains that the mind of Vision, one of the most powerful Avengers, is essentially a digital clone of another hero's mind, Simon Williams, aka Magnum. Many people who only know Vision from the movies are unaware of this crucial detail of his origin. And he goes further, mentioning that Tony Stark himself has backed up his mind in the comics. It's the most Tony Stark thing to do, right? Ego and caution walking together.
Totally. And the most recent and perhaps most complex example he cites from Marvel is the Krakoa era of the X-Men. This entire phase is based on the premise of mental backups. Professor Xavier, with the help of Cerebro, creates continuous backups of all mutants. When an X-Man dies on a mission, they simply take the last backup, insert it into a cloned body, and voila, the mutant is back. Death has become a revolving door for them, thanks to this technology. It is a concept that redefines the very existence of the characters.
And he still looks for an example in Marvel movies, for those who don't follow the comics, with the villain Arnim Zola from Captain America: The Winter Soldier. Zola survived for decades as a consciousness inside a 1970s supercomputer. We see Captain America and Black Widow interacting with an artificial intelligence that is, in fact, the preserved mind of a Nazi scientist. It's scary and brilliant. Peter truly scoured the pop culture universe in search of the best examples.
Yes, and the list continues. He goes to the cinema with Avatar, where Jake Sully's consciousness is transferred to the body of a Na'vi. He mentions Kronos, the end of humanity, Transcendence, the revolution, with Johnny Depp turning into an omnipotent AI, and even the classic Passenger of the Future. He reviews TV series like Upload from Amazon, which is a satirical comedy about digital afterlife, and the more serious and complex Altered Carbon and Battlestar Galactica. He shows that artists and screenwriters really throw ideas into the air, and scientists can deal with it later, as he jokes.
Exactly. This massive introduction of examples serves a clear purpose: to normalize the idea. It shows us that we have already consumed and accepted this concept as entertainment for decades. Now, it invites us to see it as a real scientific possibility. And that's where the video transitions into real science. It directly asks us, would you accept to back up your mind? A question that seems simple, but carries enormous philosophical and personal weight.
And then he precisely defines what we are talking about, to leave no doubt. In his words, it is about making a digital copy of everything in our brain. This includes thoughts, memories, personality, and the most complex of all, consciousness itself. Everything that defines us, that makes you, and me, could be cloned into an electronic system. The phrase he uses is very strong. The body goes, the mind stays. In theory, he says, it's a simple process, copying information. But we know that the reality is much, much deeper.
Yes, and he addresses the view of many neuroscientists that the human mind is, at its core, data and a system to process that data, all running on a biological neural network. If we already have artificial neural networks, why not take the next step? But this step requires a reality check, as Peter puts it. It demands that we question our own special nature. We see ourselves as unique beings, perhaps even with a spark of divine flame. The idea that our thought, our consciousness, is merely the result of physical and electrochemical processes is a hard blow to our collective ego.
And to support this, he cites a researcher, Christoph Koch, who firmly states that consciousness is part of the natural world. The quote is powerful. We believe it depends solely on mathematics and logic and the imperfectly known laws of physics, chemistry, and biology. They do not arise from some magical or supernatural quality. This essentially sets the script for science. Fully understand these laws, and you will not only be able to comprehend, but also replicate the human mind. Backup becomes an inevitable consequence of this understanding.
A partir daí, o Peter começa a explorar as justificativas, o porquê de alguém querer fazer isso. A primeira e mais óbvia é a que ele mencionou no início: a imortalidade, vencer a morte, separar a consciência das limitações frágeis de um corpo físico. Ele usa o termo transhumanismo, que é exatamente isso, ir além do humano. Essa consciência digital poderia viver num ambiente virtual para sempre, ou ser implantada em um novo corpo, seja ele orgânico, clonado ou até mesmo um androide. As possibilidades são infinitas e assustadoras.
And he does not stop at immortality. He enters an even more complex territory, the editing of the mind. If our consciousness becomes a digital file, what do we do with files? We edit, correct, improve. He raises the possibility of manipulating this copy to eliminate psychological problems, traumas, phobias, and of course the ultimate reference, the I know kung fu scene from Matrix. Would it be possible to add knowledge instantly, to learn astrophysics, to play the piano, to speak all the languages of the world as if they were plugins you buy and install in your consciousness?
This idea of the plugins he mentions is fantastic. Keep paying a plus, he jokes. It is a concept that blends the sublime with capitalism in a very curious way. But moving beyond personal editing, he presents a practical application on a cosmic scale: interstellar travel. It is one of humanity's greatest challenges. The distances are incomprehensible. It would take us centuries or millennia to reach the nearest star with human bodies that need life support, food, water, space.
Exactly. And the solution that Brain Backup offers is elegant and frightening. Ships that transport only consciousnesses in digital format. As Peter describes, the ship wouldn't need a cafeteria, dormitory, bathroom, or anything. It would essentially be plugging a USB drive into a rocket and launching. After millennia of travel, this consciousness would arrive at a new solar system, could explore, collect data, maybe even build a robotic body there, and then return. It solves the problem of longevity and resources all at once.
And when we think that the possibilities can't get any crazier, Peter drops the bomb of brain turbocharging. He gives us a reality check on our ego once again. He explains that although our brain has 100 trillion neural connections, it is surprisingly inefficient in terms of speed. Our neurons operate around 200 hertz. He compares this to any computer or cell phone today, which operate in multiple gigahertz. It's an absurd magnitude difference.
This part of the numbers is shocking. He claims that our machines have a processing capacity dozens of times faster than our brain. So, if we replicate the exact structure of our mind inside a machine, our reasoning would be multiplied. Everything would be faster: sensations, memories, learning. The final sentence of this section is mind-blowing. You could absorb the equivalent of 1 hour of life in just 1 second, living an entire life in a matter of minutes. What would this mean for the perception of time, for the very experience of existing?
It is dizzying. And after convincing us of all the wonders, Peter brings us back down to earth and asks, okay, how do you do it? The big challenge, according to him, is not storage. We already know how to store information. The problem is data acquisition. How to extract every little piece of information from the brain without losing anything. He makes us think about the volume of information we have in our heads, citing the example of that childhood memory that appears out of nowhere. It's all there, stored somewhere, stored.
And then the numbers come again. To replicate all the connections of the nervous system, Peter says we would need about 20,000 terabytes or 20 petabytes of space. To give a sense of scale, he compares this to 7 billion high-resolution photos, or 20 million hours of music, or 4 million HD movies. All of this to replicate the biological structure of a single brain. It's like rebuilding a house, brick by brick, wire by wire. The complexity is monumental.
And he emphasizes that this number could be even higher, given the variables we still do not understand. But being optimistic, he reminds us of technological evolution. He shares a personal anecdote about when he made emulation websites, and an Atari game had 4 kilobytes, while a simple image of the game screen was 200 kilobytes. Storage capacity has evolved exponentially, so space would not be the final problem. The problem, and here the video becomes a bit grim, is the copying method.
Yes, it presents two paths. The first has a frightening name, serial sectioning. And the technique, as Peter describes, is as frightening as the name. It involves freezing the original brain and slicing it into micro slices, almost like sheets of paper, to scan layer by layer. He jokes about the image of a deli slicer from the supermarket, but the truth is that it is a macabre process. And he clearly states the two disadvantages. It is time-consuming and, well, the patient needs to be dead. Or, if not, will die in the process.
Oh, that part of "don't do this at home" is a necessary comic relief because the concept is heavy. The good news is that technology already exists to automate slicing and scanning. The bad news is that the part about dying remains unsolved in this method. Fortunately, it presents the second method, which does not involve dying, brain mapping, using existing technologies such as functional magnetic resonance imaging, fMRI, and magnetoencephalography, MEG, to create high-resolution three-dimensional maps of the brain without having to open anyone's skull.
But then comes the however. Peter explains that for now, the resolution of these 3D maps is still far from complete. No one wants an imperfect backup missing data. Imagine being restored with missing memory or with a part of your personality corrupted. The slicing method, no matter how brutal it is, would still be the most accurate today. The expectation he mentions is that perhaps by 2045, mapping will reach the necessary sophistication for a safe backup, but other scientists project this date to be over 100 years from now.
But the key point he emphasizes is that no one doubts it will happen. Science will get there. And then we enter the next stage, having an emulator that can run this brain file. And curiously, this part is not the most behind. Peter reveals that we have already managed to emulate the brain function of simple animals, such as worms and fruit flies, and even some mental processes of a rat. The path is already being paved.
He then mentions the Blue Brain Project in Switzerland, an initiative that attempted to reverse engineer the mammalian brain. The project director, in 2009, claimed that an artificial human brain would be ready in 10 years. The prediction, of course, did not materialize. The project evolved into the Human Brain Project, received 1 billion euros, but was closed in 2023 due to mismanagement of resources. Peter emphasizes that it was not a scientific failure, but an administrative one. The research has progressed, which gives us the certainty that the day will come.
And it is at this point that the video reaches its philosophical and ethical climax. When brain backup moves from fiction to newspaper headline, how will we deal with it? The first challenge that Peter points out is philosophical. The moment we prove that consciousness is merely a physical, material structure, many theories are screwed, as he says. Human thought would become something determined by organic matter and then by bits and bytes. The concept of the soul, of the divine spark, is directly challenged.
And the questions become increasingly difficult. If we turbocharge this digital mind to run faster, is it still a human consciousness? Or is it something new, another form of intelligence that merely believes it is human? He draws a parallel with today's AIs. When a machine says it is conscious, is it truly, or is it just perfectly simulating? Where is the line between the real and the simulation? We don't know today, and will we know tomorrow?
He proposes a devastatingly sad and complex scenario. Imagine losing a loved one but having their backup. You activate it on a machine, and this machine talks to you with memories, with the voice, with the personality of the person who has passed away. It will tell you, it's me, your brother, your wife, but you in your mind will know that the living being, the body, is gone. How would our brain handle this psychological clash? The machine begging, don't turn me off, and you knowing it's software. It is of an emotional complexity that we can hardly imagine.
Leaving philosophy and moving to practical aspects, the legal roller is enormous. Peter begins to fire questions that show the size of the problem. Does a backup have the same rights as the original? And if the original is still alive, in a coma, for example, who decides to unplug to activate the backup? And what if more than one backup is activated at the same time? Would we have multiple yous walking around?
The issue of inheritance is a perfect example. The person dies, the backup is activated. Who inherits the assets? The flesh and blood heirs, or the digital copy that is, for all intents and purposes, the person? And what if the backup was made before a crime was committed? The copy, which is technically innocent, can remain free while the original body goes to jail? He even imagines bizarre scenarios, such as a living person marrying a backup that only exists in the cloud. Current laws are simply not prepared for any of this.
And the video enters its final part with the dangers of the research itself. How far can we go? Can we freeze and slice brains of human test subjects? And in the emulation method, who guarantees that the copy is perfect? He raises a terrifying possibility. A flaw in the copy, a corrupt file, could generate a digital consciousness in eternal suffering, a continuous loop of pain, anguish, and despair from which it cannot escape. Who would be responsible for this?
It's a horrible thought. And he ends with another fundamental question. Is the human mind capable of functioning outside a body? He uses a personal memory that traumatized him, a scene from RoboCop 2, where they tried to create new RoboCops, but the transplanted brains went crazy, rejecting the new body. Alex Murphy would have been a unique case, a mind strong enough. And what if the same happens to us? Imagine waking up as a backup, but without sensations, no vision, hearing, touch, smell, just pure consciousness floating in an absolute void. Sensory deprivation has already been proven to cause huge damage to the mind. It would be torture.
In the end, Peter concludes that science is just like that. It encourages questioning, forces us to think about new things, and to make decisions as they arise.
Exactly. As always, thank you very much for watching. I am Rodrigo, she is Milena, and we'll see you next time with more news.